he will bring them down.
Is that outside? Feels like I'm full.
Not yet.
It'd be a lot of fun when music on the river cranks out. Yeah.
Come on, Dale.
Yeah. It was really good. Really good.
Hasn't been too bad.
They got some exotic things on the menu too. They got some gator and shrimp. Right out. New place. We ate there for lunch today. It was awesome.
Kelly.
Yeah, I'm good.
Ready?
Yes.
Coming up that way, this guy in front of me said,
Hey, everybody, welcome to the June
We don't want to go back to March.
2020.
Flashback.
Yeah, that's right. But I had not had this many people here. It made me a little nervous. June 8th, 2020, 4:30 p.m. meeting for the Lawrenceburg Redevelopment Commission. Ms. Brookbank, can I get a roll call vote?
Executive Director Brian Messmore,
Present.
President Richard Richardson,
Present?
Vice President Lenny Fryman,
here.
Secretary Kevin Schaefer,
Here.
Member April Fritsch,
Here.
Member Brian Johnson,
Present.
School Board Member Brian Jansen is absent, and City Attorney Del Belton.
Here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. If everybody's had time to review the minutes from the previous meeting, I would accept a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Messmore, do we have any announcements today that you've got?
I have one. Does anybody else have any? All right. Tonight we're having two presentations on tax credit housing, and just wanted to make an announcement that we are or have scheduled a work session for next Tuesday, I believe, to make the selection for which firm to proceed on the tax credit application process. Has that been confirmed, Kelly?
Yes.
So there will be a work session next Tuesday,
4:30.
4:30.
It's been advertised.
All right.
That's it.
That's all. All right, we can move on to new business now.
Oh,
We'll
financial.
turn it over to Director Messmore, but our first order of new business is the
Financial
Dearborn
report.
Plaza presentations, which Mr. Messmore just alluded to. This is something I think we've all been in line to do something about for some time. Now we're in a position where we have the ability to be able to do that. So we've got two presentations this evening that's going to talk about the Dearborn Plaza and putting a, what do you call it, Brian? A senior housing?
Yes, senior
facility?
affordable housing, tax credit affordable housing.
So Brian, I will turn it over to you to introduce our presenters.
All right, well, first up is the model group, and I will let them come up and introduce themselves and expand on their organization.
Financial report. Do you want to wait now? Or, but we didn't do
Just
the
wait, yeah,
financials.
we'll
Okay.
pick it up. Please, thank you.
So I have copies of our presentation.
Yeah, I'll take care of it for you.
So I'll introduce myself. I'm Jay Kittenbrink. I'm with Episcopal Retirement Services. We're a nonprofit owner, developer, and we manage our own properties. We have about 30 affordable properties like this. Our headquarters is in Cincinnati. We have about a dozen of our 30 properties in the Cincinnati area, but we have properties in Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio. So our closest Indiana property is in Anderson, but our closest Cincinnati property is a lot closer than that. So I'm here as a co-developer and the owner and manager of that facility. I'll let Tim introduce himself.
I'm Tim Westrick. I'm with the Model Group out of Cincinnati. We are a development and construction company. Our mission is to positively transform communities. So every time we move into a new community or a new city, we ask, what does the city need? Is there a need that the city that hasn't been fulfilled in the city? Is there something that we can provide? We have a lot of partners that we work with. Episcopal Retirement Services is our biggest and one of our strongest relationships, but we try to come to communities and think, how can we do the most good? How can we get involved and use our talents to make that community better and stronger? Jay's going to tell a little bit about what we're presenting.
Okay, so in your packet, the first 4 or 5 pages are an explanation of the low-income housing tax credit, which we're not going to go over. That's just there for your reference, so you can figure out later if you have questions about that. Our contact information's on the front, and you can send us an email or call us, and we'll try and answer those questions. So, how do we get it to start to go? Page down?
Hit the right button.
Oh, there we go.
I think you got it back. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, just hit the right.
Okay.
It's advancing on our screen, but not advancing up.
You might need to restart your cast.
Maybe I use this.
I wish. That'd be easy. All right. Okay, let me restart it. Now give it a shot. Otherwise, I have no other solutions.
Where?
This is it.
Oh, up here?
For my capabilities.
Oh.
Let's see, there's one of these that's screen projected.
Well, we could just wing it since they all have the presentation in their hands.
We can, if it's all right, we can just put this online and give everybody a link to it. Maybe they can go on it if they want to see the presentation. They could go onto the website and look at it.
Huh? It was
Yeah.
working, I don't know. I mean, that's the
Well,
only
it's
thing
not-
you can do is restart the
It
cast.
goes on here, but it doesn't,
Yeah.
Okay.
doesn't continue to,
Well-
to stay there.
All the members and
All right.
council have copies.
Yeah.
Good thing I printed those. So, let me get back to where we start. The first one after the explanation was the 2 companies and our mission statements, and then there's a map of where our affordable properties are. It shows all the different places around Cincinnati, the different places around Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. We have, as I said, 30 properties. Some of those are on the same campus. There's a listing of them and all the different places they are. Then there's a couple of pages that are just pictures of different properties. So we have, the purpose of that is just to show you that we don't build the same thing everywhere we go. We adapt the construction and the look of the property to fit the city that it's in and the place that it's in. And so we're not coming in with, this is our package, this is what we build everywhere, you guys will love it, you know? We come in with an idea of, here's something that we think will fit, then we'll work with our architects. If we get an award, we'll work with the community to say, how do we tweak this so that it's what the community really desires? But there are 2 pages of that. You can see that Indiana property is a former YMCA in Anderson, and then there's also the downtown Cincinnati YMCA. We took the upper floors of both of those with the YMCA's operating on the ground floor. One of the things that we add to our communities is a lot of fitness and health care. So working with the YMCA was just a natural fit. We didn't have to build our own spaces for that. We just created a relationship where they were allowed to use the space below. So we do add a lot of things to our communities. We get to the page that talks about services through our philanthropy. We do fundraising and grant writing to add services that the rents will not cover. So that includes transportation. It includes a service coordination, which is a social worker to help the residents line up any services that they need to help them with housekeeping, transportation, medical, all those kind of things. So that social worker works on site for us. We provide an activities coordinator at every property so that we can begin to have the residents join together in activities and become a community of their own and begin to look out and help for each other. As I said, we add a lot of wellness and exercise in every building. Our vice president of affordable living is a physical therapist, so she has the best equipment designed for that age group, and we put it in every one of our properties. We find in many of our properties that people who have to go to to a hospital for hip or some other kind of replacement can come back home and actually rehab on the equipment we have with the therapist there. That avoids them having to go into a nursing home and then deteriorating to the point where they can never go back to independent living. So, and then we also do a lot of health education and screenings. We have professionals come in and provide screenings, help blood pressure checks, a lot of other things. So those are the main things. And then we also connect every property with a local church. And that church then works with the residents to find out what their churches might like to do or what church type events they might like to have, whether it's a Bible study or a service or whatever. So those are some of the extra things that we add to our properties. There's a page of pictures of those things. You can see one of our fitness rooms, our buses. All our buses are lift equipped so that we can take people who are on wheelchairs, but probably, 2 out of 12 of the residents that were riding on the bus need the lift, but it's still ready for them. So that's ERS. We've been around for 65 years. We have 3 communities for very well-to-do people, in addition to the 30 affordable properties. And I think we've taken and tried to take all the good ideas that we can from those premier communities and put them into affordable living in a way that says it shouldn't make any difference what your income is. You still have dignity, purpose, and value, and we're going to provide that in a way that the place looks like it's market rate, and the programs will be like it's market rate. And just because your income isn't there, that doesn't mean you can't have that. So that's who we are. The Model Group is our partner for construction, co-development. So I'll let Tim get into what they do, and then we'll start getting into what the proposal for the property.
Sure. We're really excited to be presenting here for a project in Lawrenceburg. As I said, I work for the Model Group, and our mission is to positively transform communities. People most know us for our work in Over the Rhine. We're developing affordable housing in Over the Rhine starting in 2003, 2004, kind of after the riots happened there and Over the Rhine back in 2001. But kind of before this big renaissance of Over the Rhine, we were there developing affordable housing, working with nonprofits such as Episcopal Retirement Services, Talbert House, which provides services to homeless vets and other people who have drug addictions and other mental disabilities. So we try to go in a community and try to find the existing partners, find out what their goals are, what their mission is, and help them build what they need, and help communities really grow in a way that's inclusive, in a way that really puts all the pieces of the puzzle together in neighborhoods and helps them really grow and thrive. On the next page of your packet, there's a couple pictures of projects that we've worked on. Kind of the one that hits home for me that's most like what we're proposing here in Durbin Plaza is Knowlton Place, which is at the upper left. This is in the north side neighborhood of Cincinnati. That's also gone through actually almost as rapid a transition as Over the Rhine has in Cincinnati over the past 10 years. Our project is among all the market rate buildings there that are designed towards young professionals, and all the hot restaurants and stuff are in the storefronts of those buildings. Our building kind of fits in among all those. That's the idea, is we're doing affordable housing, but we're doing it indistinguishable from market rate housing. And I would say our building looks as good. This is another building that we did with ERS. Our building looks as good or as good or better than any of the buildings that were built around there, and it's intended for low-income seniors. It has the community center, the fitness room that Jay was talking about, all the services that ERS provides there in the building.
The other point about that slide is that the other 3 buildings they built before we connected, and then
Yeah, we model owned and managed senior buildings before we kind of were introduced to ERS, and they do so much of a better job that it made sense for ERS to own those and manage those, just because they take better care of the seniors than a developer like us could. Next in your packet, Trinity Flats is it's the first new construction project in Over the Rhine. It was built in 2007. It was the first one in 30 years in that neighborhood. There's kind of three buildings together. The one on the right is the new construction building, but that was part of the kind of renaissance that started off around that time there and Over the Rhine. And Academy Flats on the opposite page is a school. Adaptive reuse we did to senior affordable housing as well. So that kind of brings us to our proposal for Durbin Plaza, which is on the next pages. Rob Humison is here. He's with ATA Architects. He's the architect that's designed the building here. This, we largely took a model that we know works. This is a 48-unit building that has an elevator, has the community room, the fitness room, the clinic on the first floor. We provide the health services that Jay was talking about. Sometimes I hate to show these renderings. We think that this is a design that will fit. It's designed to echo the materials and the look of the buildings there along Tate Street there. But we kind of see this as a starting point. We want to eventually, if we're awarded and allowed to move forward, we want to bring in the community and have a little design charrette and help us pick out the colors and the materials and so forth here. But that's what the building is intended to look like. There's three different kind of shots of the same building. It couldn't be in a better location. It's got that great opportunity to connect to the park, kind of to the north and to the east. You got the excuse me, adult day building right there. You've got the spray ground and the water recreation facility up the street. So we're really excited about making connections to those groups and those buildings. Jay, his ERS is based in Cincinnati, so it's not far away, and there's a lot of existing relationships that Jay has with service providers and other groups that connect well and that ERS can refer their tenants to. But we've done our best. We've talked to One Dearborn. We've talked to Lifetime Resources. We've talked to the Southeast Indiana Economic Opportunities Commission. We want to make sure that we connect, if and when we move, if we're able to move forward, we want to make sure we're connecting with the other organizations. We've talked kind of generally to Lifetime Resources. They had a congregate meal program for seniors in the community that I'm not sure why they couldn't continue doing that in Lawrenceburg, but we've talked to them about the possibility of doing that here in our building if we can, get the equipment in there and everything for them. So, we'll do our best to try to make sure that we, work with the existing service providers and complement them if and when we build this building. There's a site plan so you can kind of see how it lays out there relative to Durbin Bowl and the park and the adult day center and the auto license branch, which is right down there. There's a slide telling about the financing sources. We're happy maybe if we go into questions, whatever, we can talk a little bit about how the tax credits work, but suffice it to say, it's about a $10 million project. The tax credits cover about $8.5 million of the sources there. So what's really important to the development moving forward is not just being able to work with the city, but also we applied to Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. The deadline has been moved back. It's September 18th now. There's a timeline a little bit later in in your packet. But to get that tax credit equity is kind of our big next step. So we would, if we were to move forward with you guys, we would kind of gear up our application to IHCDA next. And then you can see the other sources of funds we have in there as well. And then the uses of funds of the $10 billion, about 7.7 goes to the construction, the rest to soft costs, the required reserves, developer fee, things of that nature. There's a slide, benefits to Lawrenceburg. I think what we can really bring to this project and bring to Lawrenceburg is really ERS. They're an experienced service provider. They're local. Their office is half an hour away. Some of their staff lives in Indiana. Lawrenceburg is kind of right in the middle of where their projects are located. So it's a community that we want to be in, that we want to spread the ERS Bible to, and really bring those services that Jay was mentioning to a community like this. ERS is committed to being the long-term owner. They want to own the building for at least 30 years. And it's their mission to make sure that it's affordable. They're not going to sell it to another owner or another developer. They want to be here for the long term. And like I said, Model Group wants to be a partner to every community we go into. So we've talked to Brian about possible other opportunities in downtown Lawrenceburg. Kind of one of our big things is historic and adaptive reuse projects. So we think there's some opportunities for us to work together in the future, provided things work out. The kind of next page there is the timeline of our next steps. We can, maybe if we get into questions, we can talk a little bit more about that. But the next step is the the LIDIC deadline, and then IHCDA. I think will announce in January and February if the project gets awarded. They haven't said a specific date that they're going to announce. They normally do, but since COVID-19 pushed the whole timeline back, I think that's still going to come out. And I think we'll stop there and let's see if you guys have any questions for Jay or for myself.
If you could, gentlemen, just go through really briefly 10,000 feet, what are tax credits and how does a project like that work?
Yeah, I
Sure
can do
it'll
that.
help everyone, because we invited city council here to be here tonight because this is such a huge project for the city. So you've got redevelopment and city council, you got the mayor here, so we wanted to get as much information tonight as we could.
All right. Well, the low-income housing tax credit is a federal program. It's allocated by the IRS to each state based on the population of the state. And so be sure you fill out your census form. Otherwise, you're not getting your share. So every year the state has a commission that is required to create a plan to allocate those out. There are roughly in Indiana $11 million in credits, and we're asking for we're asking for 840 something thousand in credits. So you can see that there'll maybe be 60 applications and 25, 30 of those will get funded because it's a very competitive process. There's a scoring process. Part of that scoring is the city contributing, so that's why we've asked for 500,000 in city funds, but we've also asked if it's possible for the land to be donated into it.
Is there some sort of deadline, or do applications come in as they do?
No, the deadline is September 18th.
Okay, and then they review all applications at that point
All
together?
once, and then they only do it once a year. And then, as he said, they would announce who wins those scoring contests. You don't know what people are going to submit from other areas around the state. And of course, Indianapolis gets more than their share.
What makes your score better?
There are a lot of things, but you're trying to make sure it's energy efficient and show that it meets those kind of requirements, that it meets the needs of the residents and the age group that you're creating it for.
There's 26 different scoring items, and they kind of run the range. The location's a big part of it, how proximate it is to grocery store, bank, pharmacy, post office, things like that. Oddly, the fact that it was a retail strip mall that was torn down, that helps, because I think the state realizes there's a lot of old strip mall sites that needed to be torn down and used for some other purpose. That actually scores, I think, 6 points. The fact that it's infill development, that there's existing development all around it, and it's not out in a green field, that helps out.
It's not out in the cornfield is what you meant.
But that's great. That was my question: is why is this particular site good, and then why is Lawrenceburg good? So what are the factors relevant to that location and then our city?
Sure.
And I think he covered some of those.
Yeah.
We think Lawrenceburg is great in a number of ways because you have so much around it, because it's close by for us. We can easily serve and work with the residents here. My family's from Aurora, so I know this area fairly well. So a lot of the reasons why we like Lawrenceburg, we actually did an application for a site ERS did up by the hospital, maybe 2014, and that didn't get awarded. But this is a much better site, scores much better. So.
And I come from an urban planning background. I just love a project like this because it fixes up a site that is vacant right now and could use some love, that it can help kind of bring a little bit of new life and a little economic development to that part of downtown. And, a lot of seniors live in houses that are not built to suit their needs. They've lived there for, 30, 40 years. Their kids have moved out and they're in a house where they have to climb steps, maybe to get in, maybe climb steps to get upstairs. The bathroom's too small, the kitchen's not laid out right. A lot of times when the seniors move to a building like ours, they're better taken care of, and that gives opportunities for those houses to be turned over, to be renovated for, people that have just started, that are just, their kids are young, they need a house that's set up for having a family and for those kind of things. So I think it can have kind of duplicative multiplier effects for a city like this to have a development with ERS in it.
What is the target? Sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
So funds are limited. Projects are coming in from all over the state. Where is your confidence level in us getting the credit for this project? And if not, where do we stand if we don't get the tax credit?
Good questions. We've scored it ourselves and think that it scores well and should get an award, or else we wouldn't be investing funds and going forward. Like I said, you don't know what else gets submitted, so we can't predict that. But we do well, I think. In the 3 states, the typical award is about 1/3 of the projects get awarded, and our track record is more like 45% of the projects that we've submitted get funded. And then I think the last part of your question was what happens if it doesn't get funded. We would probably ask to see if we could do it for the next year, and if there were ways that we could improve the score, because once you see other scores, you're in a 2-year cycle, and then they'll adjust the scoring. So you might be able to see what the scores were and see where you had to get to. So those are, does that answer?
Yeah, it does. Thank
Just
you.
to add a little bit more color too. It scores a 106 out of 143, which is a high score. The lowest scoring in the pool that it'll compete in last year was a 102. So same scoring system as last year. It would have gotten funded if we submitted it last year. So you can infer that you would win again this year. And as Jay was saying, we looked at actually a lot of projects in Indiana, and this was one of the highest scoring ones. It's a community that we want to be in. As Jay was saying, we wouldn't be moving forward. We wouldn't be asking you guys for your time and attention and money if we weren't, didn't believe in ourselves and didn't believe it was going to score well.
If the submission deadline is in September, when's the awards?
Probably January or February. They really haven't said. That's typically when they announce. So we're hoping they're going to stick to that, but they could move it back because they moved back the deadline. The original deadline was mid-July.
Original deadline was July 27th, and they would have awarded like middle of November. So I'm guessing it's going to be January, February is when they announce.
And on a project like this, if it's announced January, February timeframe, what is the general rule of thumb for construction starting on something like that after the award is made?
In the package, we said probably winter of 2022. It takes about a year to get all the legal stuff done for the tax credits and the financing and all the other financing pieces in that. And then we would close and probably get this construction by the winter of 2022.
We'll move as fast as possible. We've done a bunch of these projects, so we can, and our architect Rob knows how to design these buildings. So that's about as fast as we can go.
And how long does construction take?
Typically about a year, but then we would start leasing up the following year and usually have it full within 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
May not take that long around here.
No, it might not. Hopefully not.
There's a lot of people wanting
I have a
to get in.
question. Looking at this map here, it shows your own owned and operating and you're under development, and then you have one yellow under managed.
Yes.
What is that one, and why is it managed and not
We
owned
took
and
it over
operated?
from another nonprofit who was mismanaging it, and we just have not had a chance yet to redevelop it and recapitalize it.
Okay, so it will eventually.
It will become ours.
So you've never had any properties that you've started off managing, owning, and then
No,
turned over
we've
to
never
somebody else at
disposed
some point in
of any
time.
of our properties to someone else. We started with one affordable property in 1981 in Dayton. In 2007, they bought the second one in Cambridge, Ohio. And then from 2008 to today, we added the others. And like I said, our intention is that we want to continue to grow 1 or 2 good projects a year, but not nearly at the rate we've had for the last 12.
Approximately how many
12 years.
employees does it bring to
It-
just a hypothetical?
Typically, a project like this will have 2 full-time employees. But you'll have the construction people on the construction part of it, and then there'll also be the homemade workers and the families who will come and support the residents who live there. We can't measure that. but-
Right. But as far
But
as
they are making
managing it,
everything.
you're saying 2 full-time employees.
And that's pretty typical for a 48-unit property.
And how many units are we talking in
48 units?
48.
blocks?
48.
48?
Do you have statistics on what low income is defined as in our area?
It's based on a HUD formula. It's 60% of the area median income, and that's roughly 30,000 and below, and that's just income. Your assets don't affect that, only the income off of those assets.
Okay,
So income includes Social Security and all those kind of incomes, but
okay,
so that's, and it has to average that. You'll have some people who might be up to 80, and then you'll have some tiers that are for 30%.
okay,
And yet the rents will be structured to make sure those people can afford the rent at 30%. So because the tax credit, it comes in as equity, you sell those credits to, I didn't finish explaining that, I guess. You get an award, then you sell these to an investor. And the investor gets to write off 10 years' worth of taxes, or 800,000, whatever that number is, 840,000, whatever. And we just get that lump sum of money. You don't have to pay it back, and you don't have to pay any interest. So it keeps your costs lower, and you can have lower rents to be
okay.
able to
Is
make it
dollar
affordable.
for dollar, or is it discounted?
When you sell it, it's discounted about 92 cents, because the 10th year credit is not worth the same as the first.
Right.
So we get about 92 to 93 cents on the dollar.
So how much would you say, let's say somebody did, 30,000 is pretty close. What would your payments be on that a month?
A 1-bedroom would typically be around 600, 650, and a
650.
2-bedroom might be 750.
Well,
And then there'll be some tiers where you create a lower rent for a 30%. That would be the 60% person. So if a person had a 30% area median income is about 15,000, there would be rent structured so that they could afford that. And you have to include a mix of those to get the right points to win. And you have the state looking over this for 15 years. You have the investor who wants to make sure he gets his write-offs, looking over our shoulder for 15 years. And then after the 15 years is up and it becomes solely ours, we still have to keep it affordable for at least 15 years beyond that.
Okay,
And our intention is to go beyond the 30 years.
okay,
We may go back for a small renovation and tag on another 15.
okay. Did you guys consider any multi-building plans? I have
We've looked-
Louisville up right now. Is that high income? Is that low income?
Some of the plans that we have that have multiple buildings,
Yeah.
yeah, we have some sites like that. It just takes more land.
Okay,
So to be able to get that many units on, you need 4, 5, 6 acres.
okay,
He's asking that Episcopal Church Homes in Louisville, that's a market rate project.
That is a market
that
rate
US
project,
got
yeah.
involved with just 4 or 5 years ago.
okay.
So, but we do have patio home style. It just takes a bigger piece of land, and then you build a community building in the center, and people come to it.
Okay.
And we will continue to look for sites where that might be a possibility too.
Is there a minimum limit on how many units you have to have? the property, or, I mean, are you guys gonna do like a study, maybe you need an additional 4th floor or something?
Well, it's a strange thing. You know what you can apply for, you know what funding you can get, and you back into everything from there.
Gotcha.
So this is a 48-unit building, fits well with the kind of awards that IHCDA gives. That's what we found. We'll do market study where it's required for the application, and it'll show the need that's here in the area, which I'm sure is bigger than that. But then we would look for
A second property.
another location and look for another opportunity to do more.
48 is a good starting point.
I have a question if nobody else does. You mentioned the bus with the wheelchair ramp and everything. Is every unit in the property ADA accessible, or do you guys have a particular wing that you know is more desired? Or?
You're required to put in 10% that are fully ADA accessible. The rest are considered universal design, which means with just a few tweaks, you could convert it to an ADA unit.
But typically, all of your properties, 10% of total unit is totally
Full
accessible.
ADA. And everything, I mean, all the thresholds, all the kitchens all have full turning radiuses.
Right.
The bathrooms all have full turning radiuses. And so that if people deteriorate to the point where they need a wheelchair, they don't have to move into a different unit because that's adapted and this one isn't. So that's the universal design piece. And the switches are all at the right height.
Right.
So typically in a non-ADA unit, you still have cabinets underneath
Mhm.
the sinks, but you can remove the doors and the floor and convert it if you
Right.
wanted to. So that's what universal design does. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. Thank you.
Do any of our other council members that are present have any questions they'd like to ask?
No, go ahead.
I'm just curious, do you guys provide the skilled nursing? Is that something that Episcopal has their own?
We do in our 3 premier communities. We don't do it in affordable living. We just bring in partners who provide health services, and then we provide our social workers to help the people connect to the services they need.
So it just seems that, I mean, there's a lot of home health care services here. And
Exactly.
Other professional services that would be utilized
Right.
in this facility as well.
Exactly.
Similarly to how they may at some of our other facilities in the area.
Yeah, we'll be using the local folks to connect them. Every service coordinator or social worker finds out all the services that are in the community and uses those as the way to connect people.
Would that be an additional cost to
No,
the
there's
resident?
no cost to that.
Okay, so they can have their area cleaned, their unit
A
cleaned?
lot of them get a
Dusted.
homemade worker through their different programs that will help them do that. And that's,
Okay.
the social worker knows those, which the residents may not. So that's
Okay.
the purpose of having that person be the coordinator, connect them to the right programs and the right systems.
And I apologize, you may have answered this and perhaps I didn't hear it. Is there a social worker on site at the facility? So
Yeah,
you'd have a
not-
social worker,
not
a,
40 hours a week, but they're probably
somebody's coming in
15 to
periodically.
20 hours a week.
What about the activity director and the
And that's also probably a part-time,
part-time?
but it's, you know, probably 10, 15 hours a week. And it may be combined with someone else. But, and then we have a fleet of buses, so we'll probably bring a bus down to take them to grocery stores, to events in Cincinnati, and
How does that work? Do they have to apply ahead of time to get on the bus to go, or?
we usually have a sign-up list, and we ask them to put something down, because otherwise they just forget.
Yeah, I think,
And then when they show up, they get it back, but, you know, it's like, okay, if you didn't show up, you lost your dollar, you know? But that's the kind of thing. And we typically have some scheduled things, so there'll be a calendar every month of all the things that are gonna go on, what day they're gonna be shopping, and then there'll be a sign-up list.
Now, the rough $600 number, I understand that's very rough, but does that include utilities?
It depends. In this case, it probably covers most things except electric. And
Okay.
one of the reasons for that is that the green requirements don't work very well if the resident isn't paying the bill. You know, they want to come back later and say, yeah,
Okay.
that green stuff that we required you to put in there really did a good job, you know?
Okay.
So that's a part of it. But otherwise, the sewer, water, they do pay their own cable, and it just depends. Sometimes we provide free Wi-Fi.
Do you have more stringent requirements in regards to insulation values and walls? And
Oh, yeah, like I said, most of these end up being lead, silver, gold. So
Okay.
lead is a
Yeah.
standard. We don't always pay for the certification because it's $35,000,
Right.
but
But I mean,
they're at that level.
I think, what Mr. Westers had to say earlier just hit the nail on the head, that, you know, this is a big shift, that we have a very high demographic of older, people who need more accessible housing, and have to walk up and down the steps, and can't afford even to fix their homes up.
Right.
And I think as we shift, you know, some of this older population to more accessible housing affordably, especially, I mean, just knowing that our median household income is $37,000, $37,123 in our area, that might put us at a little bit of a disadvantage because 60% of the lower number, you know, kind of,
Well, you're fortunate that they're using the Cincinnati metro area,
oh, they are. Oh, okay, well, that, yeah,
so,
yeah, then that's very fortunate for us then.
yeah,
If that's the case, it's not using Lawrenceburg. We are fairly low median.
right.
But on the other side of things, and I think this is something even for redevelopment to continue to keep your eyes on, and, as many of you guys know, I rehab older homes, but as we invite a younger demographic that's coming into this area, that's a perfect opportunity, as some of the older folks are moving into more accessible housing, to begin to take on these projects that, or they can get up and down the steps easily, you know, they have, you know, the time and energy and resources to be able to fix up some of these older homes, and even potentially, we already have some incredible grants, you know, programs, different things in the city that, you know, that utilize these things, so I think that's a really good shift, and, excited to hear more about this opportunity, you have a big partner with that too.
So this will be owned and operated by a nonprofit?
Correct.
So it's
It will be a
subject to-
for-profit entity, but it'll be owned by us and run by us.
Okay, so you said.
It has to be a for-profit because
Yes, okay.
it still pays property tax, but it has to be for-profit so that that investor can write off
Got it.
the tax things that
Makes sense.
he's paid for.
But it'll pay property taxes just akin to any other 48-unit building that would be there.
Okay.
And that will continue indefinitely. There's no 15-year.
No.
You guys will not own it after 15 years.
We'll still own it, but,
But
we
you'll still pay
often
property
don't
tax.
qualify for property tax abatement.
Okay.
Typically, the rules around that are a little different about properties that are owned by nonprofits. HUD facilities, everybody figures, well, HUD's paying that, so it doesn't help the residents, so why should we let them off the hook? So that kind of set the standard around all the states that they still tax the property,
Okay.
even if it may be a nonprofit owner.
Now, how's it work with the elderly, like, when you guys decide you want to raise the rent? How often do you do that, or how does that work?
Usually we'll raise the rent annually, but it'll be like 2-3%. And that's calculated into a pro forma that we create at the beginning, so that all the costs that are gonna increase through the 15 years, we have to show that that's gonna work to ICDA. And so that amount gradually increases each year.
Because I know if you got people that's on a fixed income, you raise the rate, you take 2-3% away from them, that's going to be kind of tough on a lot of them.
Well, most of them are getting 2%, 3% on their Social Security increase too. And now, they'll take away half of that with the Medicare, but.
Yeah, I was going to say Medicare's going to eat a lot of that up.
But yes, it does get more challenging. We'll try and work with people to help them connect to a voucher if they need help paying their rent, and other ways like that.
Yeah, because I know a lot of them.
That's what the
Yeah.
social worker's there for too, is it when someone gets to a point where, you know, this is increased 4 times and I
And they're
can't
there all
keep
the
their-"
time, or about 15 hours a week?
They're
or
about half-time.
half the time?
Guys, we definitely appreciate you coming in and presenting for us. I think two comments that I would make is typically we would usually go and visit the property that has been managed by ESR. In this case, of course, we were not able to do that because of the COVID-19 issues that we've had in 2020. However, I know that we all did our due diligence. We did, at least I know that I can say I did. We went online to check out what you offer, the facilities that you offer. I love your spiritual aspect of what you do there. I think it's really nice. But also the second point I would make just for both of these presenters is that this is a definite need for this community. We've got senior housing now where there's a list to get into it. So
Right.
any way we can alleviate that, I think that's what we're looking to do. So thank you, gentlemen, for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you guys very much.
We're committed to try and keep working at it until we can help you get it done.
All right, that's
And
what we need.
We'd love to take you to a property, and typically we would too. But that, as you said, right now I can take you and you can walk around the outside, but I can't let you in the building. I can't even get in the building.
That's for the best. It's just an odd year, but
And we have 2,500 residents and 500 employees and no cases of COVID.
well, that's good. No
Sorry.
cases of COVID?
None.
Wow.
So,
Thanks, guys.
all right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
do you want us to stick around or should we go?
You'll let us know. That's what I understood, right?
Yeah. Then I showed you where to go for the.
Yep. Looks just like that. All right, thanks.
Presentation.
So that.
Bear with us for just a moment, everybody. We'll get set up for the second presenters on their way in now.
Investment. 8.5 of 10. Because there's that extra gap, so they're getting 8.5.
I texted John.
Well, because their price
They use
model.
And it's not-
It's a good point. I think what they would do is walk us through, and we should probably ask them, they would walk us through why is it,
Thank you.
why is it so that they need that to break.
We looked at
even.
that the other day. It was working fine. We had things on there showing on the screens, and
Well,
today it's just
I
not
would
there for us.
Imagine that their model.
See, hopefully we can make it work.
That break-even point or close to it, I think their profit is not built really into that.
You can't be
I'd
doing
want to
something.
hear that from them, that's a good question.
What?
And we could ask these guys, they've got the same structure. Well, we could ask them. Why you guys? That'd be a good question.
So far.
That would be the end there.
around me if I sit right here? We're gonna go in? I have an extra. Yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah, this is where the last one failed, yeah.
Guys.
Hit next though, that's where it went wrong. Okay, maybe
It
it's the
started
computer.
Now,
freeze
this
it
guy
up.
right here is a tech guru.
I,
He got it.
I just followed Kelly's instructions. That's all I did.
I'm gonna say it was their computer, not the person.
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, guys, just want to let you know what we kind of led off, or what we said at the last of that one. We have identified senior housing as a need in this community. We know that it's something we've got to have. We definitely want to partner with somebody that's able to bring a good facility to the downtown area. I think we've got a good area for it. We just need to know what you guys offer. So we'll turn it over to you, and
Okay.
and you can make your presentation.
Great.
Thank you. Real quick, my name's David Flaherty, Flaherty and Collins Properties. It's been a while since we've been here, but we're working on getting going here very quickly on the market rate piece right on the river. And with the Army Corps' blessing, we'll be ready to go here hopefully within a couple of months. So you may know us as market rate developers, which we do a ton of that all over the country. But affordable is a big part of our business. So Drew Rosenbarger is one of our people that are very involved in the affordable, as is Danny Miller, who's also on the affordable side. So they're here to kind of work with me on presenting tonight to show you how we can meet your needs of affordable housing for the seniors. Real quick, because I know kind of on a time frame, we'll run through some of the people. Jerry Collins, who you've met before, myself and Drew. These are people that would touch the deal. Management's very important. Alicia kind of runs our affordable management, and Danny you just met, and then Michael Collins is very involved in management. Darren Kittner, who's kind of been the one leading the charge here on the market rate piece, would not be as involved on the affordable side, but he's got his fingers in a lot of different pieces within the company. Mike Fox would be running our construction, and Mike and Brandon and all these guys are involved on the market rate piece, would also be involved here. We work very closely with the architect. Curlis is involved in helping on the financing, as is our CFO, Derek Hammond. Then compliance is very important, so we have a compliance team, which Kim runs, and then the controller, obviously tracking the numbers and everything is Denise's role, and Brian helps in the marketing side. So a lot of depth within the company. We do have over 400 employees, so we probably do more public-private housing around the country than I think about anybody. Definitely you'll see what we've done in Indiana. We've got a heavy concentration in Indiana. Is that next? I think we've got about 25,000 people that live in our properties, Midwest orientated, although we're outside of the Midwest, but a nice mix of market rate and affordable. Usually what you find in our world, someone is either a market rate developer and may dabble in affordable, or they're an affordable developer and may occasionally dabble in market rate. Within our organization, both are very big parts of what we do as a company. These are some of the states that we've been in. So we're not staying away from the West Coast, but we like the Midwest, and Indiana in particular. And this is an interesting slide. Just this is different cities that we've touched within the state of Indiana. I think it's a total of 36. And it's some of these, well, most of these are developments that we've done, or like Lawrenceburg, we've got one coming, and then we've managed some in some of the other communities as well. So I don't think any other developer can come close to this when it comes to Indiana. Just sizes and everything, but yeah, we like our awards. Largest, what's that? Number one in multifamily management within the state. But yeah, we get plenty of awards. Here, private companies being a fair amount of revenue at 157 million. So there's a couple that are bigger. I think Simon Properties is here and Duke Realty, so they're maybe bigger than us, but bigger isn't always better, but it does have some advantages as far as a track record and getting things done.
The top, let's see, we are also number 36 in the top top 50 national affordable housing developers as well.
Thank you, Drew. Yeah, so that just shows you it's a good mixture of affordable and market rate. Giving back to the community wherever we do business, we like to give back in different ways and support different charities. Affordable housing, so we've got, 30 deals? We've done 30 in the state of Indiana. And as you'll hear from Drew and Danny a little bit, this is a very competitive, what we're going after. So having that track record, getting awards from ICDA is critical. And so I don't think anyone's probably done as many deals in Indiana as we have. Here again, between the affordable and the market rate, it's a pretty big number as far as what we've done. The greater metropolitan area here has been one of our, we've got a tower going in downtown Cincinnati. We've got one over in Covington, near Monstras. We've got just broke ground up in Cleveland on an $80-some million deal. Have one in Columbus. So we're also doing an affordable deal in Terre Haute, Indiana that we've just started on. So we're very active in the area for sure. And the coronavirus has been a big negative for a lot of developers. Will maybe put some people under just with collections, and trying to get deals done has become a lot more difficult. So I do think somebody with a track record and financial ability to get deals done is maybe more important than it's ever been, because we're getting calls from, hey, they couldn't get it done, you guys want to look at the deal. So it is harder. We got a lot of relationships with a lot of lenders that we're able to still perform and get our deals done. As This one may look a little bit familiar. So this is the Whiskey River down on the levee, and we're very excited. This will be a spectacular development with killer views. So obviously, we're going after a different setup here. This is bringing people to Lawrenceburg with big incomes and helping support people here that will come here and help support the businesses, stay here, and hopefully buy houses long-term, have families here. But we bring in the young professionals as well as the baby boomers in this type of product. So that's obviously different than when we're going after affordable seniors. So it's a different demographic. Both of them have obviously benefits for your community. I'll kick this over to you, Drew, if you want to talk about some of our recent affordable deals.
I'm Drew Rosenberger again. I'm one of the developers at Flaherty and Collins, and I focus completely on the affordable side. And before coming over to Flaherty and Collins, I actually worked for the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. So I was scoring applications and distributing tax credits around the state and evaluating projects. So I have an intimate knowledge of what it takes to score and be competitive. And actually, we just hired Danny. We actually worked together while at the agency, and she spent 4 years in that role scoring applications. So the two of us, I can assure you, have an absolute understanding of these programs. The 9%. Yeah.
Hey, following your strategy.
Well, as you'll see, these things are super competitive. Every little point counts. So when you got people that for a living scored it, nobody knows better than them. So we were very thrilled when we got encouraged Drew to come to the private side, and as well as Danny as well. So yes, it makes a big difference when you're trying to get these awards.
Yeah. So these are a couple of the I wanted to pull some new construction projects, since this would be a new construction site. This is a project in Mount Vernon. This is a senior deal, 46 affordable units, and some market rate and retail there. It's actually also on the river. This is River Point, also on the river. This is in Tell City. 40 senior apartments, and there are 10 market rate units on top, and then there is some retail on the first floor too. This one is in Petersburg, Indiana. This is Downtown Terrace. This is, I guess I neglected to say that some of these have won awards from Affordable Housing Finance. So these are award-winning projects. We're a award-winning company with award-winning projects. This one was a pretty cool project because we brought a health clinic to this site. The Petersburg didn't have quite enough healthcare coverage, so we were able to secure a Good Samaritan Hospital to come into the building. So going outside of Indiana, this is a pretty cool project up in St. Paul, Minnesota. This is a 248 unit, extremely complex deal. This is about as complex of a deal that you could do. It's a 80% affordable, 20% market rate with some first floor retail. And actually the market rate units are in a really complex structure scattered in between, scattered throughout the building. So just to show our capacity there. And this is a 252 unit, really big deal out in Washington, D.C. 80% affordable, 20% market rate. This one's under construction. This is one of the buildings that's completed. There's 7 overall, and we're about halfway through. This is a very challenging site. This was actually is one of the first mental health institutions in the United States, and it had been sitting vacant for decades. And so we're rehabbing it to its former glory.
Yeah. And nothing against Washington, D.C., but when we can work with cities like Lawrenceburg versus Washington, D.C., we'll do that all day long.
Yeah, it's a lot of red tape out there. Okay, so I just wanted to go through some of our other affordable projects, just so you can see the quality that we can deliver and have done in Indiana and elsewhere. So now to go into this site, and before I jump into our actual proposal, I just want to go over the different avenues you can go on this site. So there's really two affordable housing funding programs with the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, the 9% option, the 4% option. Just to keep it simple, think of the 9% option as more state money, and the 4% option as less state money. So there's pluses and minuses to both of these programs. This site is so big that we could do either program. So I just want to give you those options. So, but the 9% option, you're getting more state funding, so there's going to be less subsidy or money required from the community. With that extra money that comes with it, well, one, they can't do as many units, so you're going to have a smaller project because they're giving more money per unit. And then also, it's extremely competitive. I think, what's the typical ratio, Danny? Like,
IHCDA funds 1/3 of applications each round for the 9% round. We usually get about, they.
It's recent.
In a couple months. We've been in quarantine. I haven't talked to anybody for a while. IHCDA typically gets about 50 to 60 applications each round. Typically fund about 15 to 17 of those. So it's every point matters.
Every single point matters. You can't leave anything on the table. The applications have to be basically perfect. They actually have a scoring category that if you don't have any mistakes in your application, you get an additional 4 points. So that's where us having the experience working with the agency, knowing how they read the QAP, having been involved in policies that were written into the QAP, we know what they're looking for, and we think we have the team that can put together the most clean application. And again, it's critical, especially in the 9% round, to have a clean application so you can maximize all your points and get funded. So the 4% option I said is less money. Why would you do the less money? Well, it's not competitive at all. Where in the 9% round, you've got to get every single point. The state is kind of dictating a lot of the things that you have to do on the site. The 4% option, there's more flexibility. You can do more units. The 4% credits and funding is not limited, so it's a rolling application rather than a 9% application being due on September 18th, and we got to hit that date, or else we got to wait until the next year. 4%, we could get on board with what we're doing and just put the application in and go.
So could the strategy be to apply for the 9% option, and then if we don't get it, reapply right away for the 4%? This is going to be one of the options that I was going to propose. That would make a lot of sense, because this site, while we wouldn't be here if we didn't think it would have a chance of getting funded in the 9% round, but it's not. I'll be honest, it's not a no-brainer. This is going to score and this is going to win 100%. I mean, it's very few sites across the state can say that, but it's not a shoo-in. But with that, I think, where do we have the score coming in?
Right around 105.
And what was funded last year?
104.
So in this,
108.
So yeah, so there's different set-asides, and within the set-aside, the rural set-aside that we would be competing in, we're coming in right around the middle of what was funded last year. Typically, you want to be at the higher range of that going in on the second round of, sorry, too many details, but the second round of the QAP, the scores go up, and so you want to be coming in higher. But given the circumstances with the pandemic, it's kind of a wild card year, because you don't know, it's hard to gauge who's going to have projects coming in, and so we think that the score would have a good chance of getting funded. So just laying those options out there for you guys. We can do either. So here's the site. You guys are familiar with it. So we work together with American Structure Point, again, on sizing up this site plan. There's actually, the site it's a nice big site, but it's not immediately obvious how to orient the buildings on the site. So we initially were looking at putting the building on Front Street, but you're kind of just looking at the big warehouse across the street. And so we actually worked with Structure Point to actually move it over so that we could orient the building so that it's facing towards the pretty park and looking towards the city, not at the warehouse. So then you've got, you know, the adult center next to it, and the park to the north there. So an brief overview of what this option would look like. It'd be like a 63,000 square foot, 4-story wood frame building, 55 plus senior. The project actually, for the 9% round, needs to be senior because we would get points that we really need to get to make it competitive. So this option would be 60 units. We're showing 36 1-bed, 24 2-bed. And I should have said this before, but everything that I'm showing you can be modified. With a click of the button, we can flip the building back over to Front Street in no time, and the same would be true for renderings and colors and all that. We can work with you to deliver what you want as long as it's within reason. So 93 parking spaces, that's about 1.6 per unit. This would come in, our construction guys turn this around pretty quick for us, and it would come in around $12 million. So where the rubber hits the road on this is that we would need to come up with 1.2 million of leverage. And so typically when you think about the 9% program, the way it's structured is that you don't need money. Well, IHCDA wants to be able to fund projects in as many communities as possible. So they incentivize you to ask for less money, and they do that with points. And so as I said earlier, this isn't a shoe-in score, so we got to maximize some of the points. So this relates specifically to a category of leveraging. To get the maximum amount of points, you got to have 10% of the development cost come from the local community. It doesn't have to be a check. It can be a combination of donated land, tax abatement, waived fees, site prep. If you have a local foundation that can give grants or below market interest loans, we just got to get to a total of 1.2 million to be able to get 4 points so that we can be as competitive as possible. So that's about $20,000 per unit. Again, we don't need to be honest, we don't need the 1.2 million to make the deal financially feasible. We need the 1.2 million to make the deal score so we can even get the credits to do it under the 9% program.
And then that can maybe then go into a nicer facade, more masonry, things like that.
Yeah.
Where you guys would have design approval as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a rendering. Structure Point put this up pretty quickly for us. Again, everything could change. This is just giving an idea. Here's another one. We wanted to have at least some brick. We could potentially do more brick. I mean, this is all super preliminary. We don't have any construction drawings to go off of, so we could work with you through the process, figure out what the finishes and exterior would look like, and we can change the whole design if you wanted to.
How limited are we on the design? It's noticeably less appealing to the eye than your other projects, right?
That's a function of the, it's a function of the affordable housing program. There's just not as much money to be able to have as nice of a product as the market rate. I'll tell you though that the interior finishes, they're going to, we often, when we're taking people on tours, are like, this looks like a market rate unit. And like we said, we can.
Yeah, and we can show you some of our affordable deals because they don't look affordable, but we can do. Correct me if I'm wrong, Drew. We can make it look like anything you want. It's just at some point, well, we can only get an award of what, 1.2 million or 12 million.
So you're capped on the amount of credits you can ask for. And we tried to just show something that was as cost effective within the program, but we're not limited on design. We can do as much as you want, but if we start lifting brick all the way up the building and adding in more design elements, it's going to increase the cost and it might increase the gap a little bit, but we're not limited on design. The state's not gonna tell us we can't deliver a more
They would
beautiful
love it,
product.
yeah. And that's kind of our general philosophy of open book. Here's the credits, here's what they're worth, here's what it's going to cost to do it this way. If you want to do it that way, here's what it looks like. But I'm thinking maybe some of that 1.2 could go into kind of the appearance of the building if you wanted to spruce that up some.
Yeah, we could absolutely work on that. So, and
'Cause
again,
this is not, when I saw the rendering, it didn't knock my socks off, especially knowing the kind of developments we do. But
Yeah.
Structure Point's very good, but maybe, this
it
wasn't their
absolutely,
finest rendering.
none of this, nothing that I'm showing would even be the final product numbers. Everything's gonna be adjusted and go up and down as we get actual construction drawings to bid off of this. It could, who knows, hopefully a positive outcome of the coronavirus is that construction pricing goes down, and then we can do more without having to ask for more money. So yeah, everything can be adjusted, and we can work with you. We want to deliver what you want. Okay, so 4% option. This is basically just doubling the size of the project. So just to go real quick back up to the 9% site plan. This is utilizing a little bit over half of the site. So you've got a pretty big site, and the 4% option would maximize the development on the site. So again, you see we're pushing the parking towards the warehouse and orienting the building so that it's looking out at the community and out at the park. The rendering of it, you would just continue the design around. It's pretty straightforward. So what does this look like in terms of the numbers? You're basically doubling the size of the project, so getting up to 126,000 square feet. Senior population, we would want to ensure that there's enough market demand for 120 units of senior, but there probably is. 180 parking spaces, 1.5 per unit. We could get up to 140 units on the site, but we would have to start bringing that parking number down. But those are all things we can go back and forth on and pull different levers. So this one comes in at about $22 million for total development cost. This one, whereas the 9% you need subsidy to score, the 4% program is about, can you make a deal pencil? So for financial feasibility reasons, this deal would have about a $5.7 million gap, and we have a tax abatement included in those numbers. So $47,000 of subsidy per unit. I understand that's a big number. I just wanted to point out those two options are available to you. There is some merit to a 4% option because you could go and just do the project. You don't have to roll the dice on getting funding in the 9% round. So, but like I said, we can do either option. Timeline, for the 9% round, applications are due September 18th, so we would want to, if we were selected, lucky enough to be selected, we would want to start working on putting that application together with you all as soon as possible to meet the September 18th deadline. They usually take about 3 to 4 months to evaluate projects, and so I'm guessing awards are going to come through January 2021. The timeline's a little bit off due to the pandemic. So give us a conservative 8 months to get closed and start construction, and then about a year or so for the 9% option for construction completion and to begin leasing in August 2022. Maybe a little bit, add a few months on for the 4% option.
What do you guys offer the senior residents that are going to be there? Any kind of services, any kind of programs?
Yeah, so every single property that we have has an extensive tenant services plan. That's actually part, in the 9% program, you have to put together a certain amount of services, but we typically go above and beyond to try to max out points, and also it's better for the residents. So whenever a potential resident comes in, they're filling out an application, we have a whole questionnaire that goes through. You need financial literacy, you need help with your prescriptions, you need grocery delivery. There's a whole list of services that they can check off, and then our staff would help connect them to service agencies in the community that can help with that.
When you say staff, is there somebody on site that comes to help individuals with what's going on, or to talk to them, or is that somebody that they would call on the phone? Personal.
So we would have a property manager on site full time. So they would be there every day helping the residents. So the way it usually works is that the property manager is not a trained caseworker or social worker, but their role is to connect the residents that may need something to service providers that are experts in whatever service they're looking for. But on a day-to-day basis, the property managers, they're holding events and making sure there's resident engagement, doing stuff in the community rooms with all the residents. So there's definitely interaction, but when there's more advanced services, that's something that we would bring in.
Nothing like an activities director or something like that, where they have like 20 hours a week where they come on site. You don't have any of that?
That's typically a role that the property manager fulfills. That's what they do.
We encourage in market rate and affordable properties a lot of community events. And so we'll have a maintenance person here full-time as well.
Yeah.
But if it were, I'm trying to think of something specific that took real training, our staff, we would maybe need to reach out to have somebody like that. But as far as having activities for the seniors and a big common area where they can have gathering areas, we definitely have that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you provide any kind of transportation? Do you have any bus services, anything of that nature that you would provide?
We don't, the properties can't support that out of the property budget, but on almost every single project that we partner with outside transportation agencies that come and can take residents to their doctor's appointments or take them to the grocery store.
You would be looking for one local?
Yeah.
To do that?
Mm-hmm.
I think Lifetime.
Is that the?
Yeah, they do.
They do, but that gets a little sketchy sometimes.
Sure.
Just not to say anything negative about them, I'm not saying that, but they do have a full load.
Okay.
So out of all your properties, the affordable housing, you manage all of them? You haven't sold off or turned it over?
No.
They were-
No, we've never sold a affordable deal, and we've only sold one market rate deal in the last 5 years. So that's really unique on the market rate side. So yeah, we're long-term owners, holders, so you'll be talking 10 years from now, you'd still be talking to us, so.
Gotcha. You built Tuscany Bay, correct?
We did not.
We just managed that
Yeah.
one.
Oh, you just managed it?
So within the company, we have a construction division, a development division. We only do our own stuff in construction development. Management, we do third party. So we get hired to manage something that we don't own. We manage all our own stuff, but then we'll get hired by an owner sometimes to do that. And so we manage for that owner at one point in time. We don't manage anymore.
I think as of, what did Michael say? I think maybe last November, I think we stopped managing that, and when we left, it was, it was 97% leased. But
So you're not involved with Tuscany?
we're not involved in that
Okay.
anymore.
Don't know if that's good or bad, but we're not there. So we can't take any credit or blame, I guess.
I want to piggyback a question that was asked earlier by another board member during the other presentation. Do you have any idea what your average rent would be? And then does that typically go up on a yearly basis? And do you know the percentage as to what it would go up?
I can talk about rents a little bit. So we are basically within the tax credit program. The IRS does set rents, and so we have to follow those. So for Dearborn County 2020 rents, we would need to target some, for the 9% option, we do have to target some lower incomes in order to get points. So 50% of the units have to be leased to households at or below 50% of the area median income. So 50% of the area median income, let's see, I don't have the income limit, but for rent, for an efficiency, you pay $756, 1 bed, $810, 2 bed, $971. We can go up to 60% AMI, charging $907 for an efficiency, $972 for a one-bed, $1,165 for a two-bed. So
So that's, just to clarify, that's the max, and so we would evaluate the market to, 'cause often we bring those rents lower than that, but those are the caps.
Well, let's go with a round ball picture, like number $30,000. What would it cost for them senior citizens to live there? What would it be, a one-bedroom, a two-bedroom?
30,000 would probably be 50% AMI. So what's,
That'd probably be more like 75% of the median for, well, not Dearborn County, I mean for Lawrenceburg. Did they do it by county?
it's by county.
it is by county.
What's your median income here? Do you know?
Justin, do you know the median income here?
I can find it in the county. I know the city.
So 30 might,
So you're saying if they made if they had an
Let's just say you was on a fixed income.
if you have a fixed income of 30,000,
Thousand.
generally a third of that can go towards rent.
mhm.
So that would be 10,000, so that's 850 a month.
A month. Is that a one-bedroom?
What is it, what would it?
I
what
think,
were those
I think
rents?
you could do a two-bedroom with that.
Yeah.
The 62 for Dearborn County. That sounds
850.
high.
The program dictates that no one can pay any more than 30% of their monthly income towards
Right.
rent. So no matter who makes what, that is the cap.
Yeah.
30% of your income cannot.
So if they make 20,000, you only
They
get
would be.
30% of it, so.
They would be
They would
one of
pay
the lower
max of,
income.
max of 30% of their income. They would probably qualify in like the 30% AMI.
And it's 30% now, is that one bedroom or is that two?
Let me pull up
I can pull up the income limits if you want me.
numbers here.
Would you have utilities included in that rent?
You get a utility allowance, so whatever the max rent is, there's a utility allowance calculated, and so they knock down the rent by the utility allowance to help them, to give them
Okay.
extra money to be able to pay their rent. So I've got, so a 30% AMI unit, which is the lowest, the max rent for a one-bedroom is $486, minus utility allowance of, say, $70, would put that at about $416. So you go from the lowest amount of like 416 up to a highest amount that I have underwritten at around 900 for the most
So what would-
expensive
A
two-bedroom.
two-bedroom at 30, what would that be, Drew?
Two-bedroom at 30 would be $497.
497.
So you could.
You guys don't make up these numbers, they're from the IRS.
They're dictated.
Okay.
So
And
these
so
numbers are
compare
pretty
your-
true.
What's that?
These numbers are pretty true. They're pretty
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
hmm The only fluctuation is where the utility allowance comes in, and that's dictated by third party. So that's either you're hiring a energy consultant to do an audit of the building, and they'll determine based on the local utility rates the estimate of what their utilities are going to cost, and then or you can use there's a HUD model, so you can. But it's third party. We don't say, oh, we want to charge more for rent, so let's decrease their utility allowance. We can't do
Okay.
that.
And so when we apply, we decide how many lower income folks we're gonna have versus moderate income for this project. If we don't have tenants come forward, how does that work? You just leave the unit open? Or after some time passes, you can fill it with whoever
So
you want?
typically what happens is, in the 9% program, if you want to score, you have to do 25% at 30% AMI, 25% at 50% or less, and 50% at 60% or less.
Okay, but those
And
are
so
just
if
blind
you-
guesses, right?
It's a blind guess, but you're always going to fill the 30s because there's always going to be there's a extreme lack of housing for people at that level. So they're gonna
Okay.
those are gonna lease up. Those are always lease up the fastest. And then actually, what ends up being the problem is sometimes, depending on where you are, you might not be able to get the maximum 50% or 60% rent. So then we'll just start decreasing it, and then it'll balance out within the market to get those leased.
We'll set the rent, so it'll be filled. It's just how much will we get in the rent for the top category? I think everything we have on the affordable side, well, actually, the market rate side is all well into the 90s. And then somebody asked a question about how the rents vary every year, and that's, I'll let you guys answer.
So we underwrite a 2% increase, but it's dictated by, every year it's dictated by what the HUD rent and income limits. So it's all based on what HUD determines the area median income to be. So we can't say, oh, we got it, we're 100% leased, let's jack up the rents. We can't, you're not allowed to do that.
Anybody have any additional questions? And I would open it up for council as well, if any of you have questions. No?
I'm curious if you guys have considered the possibility of multiple structures on there. I mean, that being such a large lot, and obviously, I understand it's probably more economically feasible to put everything in one building. But as far as the aesthetics and filling that lot, of having maybe 4 units of, 4 24, unit buildings or, such.
You could do that, and the one thing, if we did the 9, there would be, and we did it in the 4-story elevator product, there would be room to do more. And if you did more of not a seniors, but a family, then seniors like the elevator, they like the gathering place without having to go outside. Doesn't mean you have to do that, because the quality of what you're getting. So we could spread it out if it's like, we're not going after second phase. It wouldn't be as ideal, but there's no rule against that. If you wanted to save some of the land to go back for another 9%, and then maybe that could be spread out. But yeah, there's nothing that says you have to do that.
So if we build the single structure in 2 years, we could come back to the table and add on to that building?
Yeah, you said we'd actually, because I thought, oh, they're not going to give us, if we get one award, are they going to give us another in a couple of years? But what you said, they actually give us points. What was that?
If it's a different occupancy type, there are some scoring categories that, right now, the 9% senior deal scores great because there isn't an existing senior deal in that census tract. So if we came back 2 years later and wanted to do another senior deal, we wouldn't be able to get those points because of this senior deal that's existing.
So we'd have to flip to a family
So if maybe
occupancy.
we came back and did a multifamily project, that would score because it's not age restricted. So they try to minimize, concentrating the same sorts of properties in the same census tract. So that's kind of a way they incentivize multiple occupancy types.
So that's just something to keep in mind. And then there's always the caveat, they change the policy every 2 years.
Yeah.
They could change anything they want. So what we're telling you could theoretically, they could say, why do we add that category? Let's take that out, and then we could do another senior deal. It's unfortunately, the state kind of dictates what you can do.
Is there a time constraint from if we get this award to when we could reapply for the next one?
If you wait longer, you get more points, right? It's because there's the number of units, awarded to a community within the past number of years. So
my thought is, could we create a master plan for the entire parcel of ground and maybe have two units planned into it?
You could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of
They're
laid out
just-
like that now.
If we can get a $20 million project done for $1 million out of pocket, or
That's not even out of pocket, so that'd be land and TIF and things like that, too.
right.
The only thing to take into consideration for a 2-phase 9% project is that, like we said, it is extremely competitive. And so if you go in the master plan to say, and we get one done, then there's no guarantee that the next phase is gonna get funded right when you want it done.
So what you're saying, if we put this one up, we get it at 9%, after we get this put in, they may say, well, we don't want to give us 9%. They may only want to give us the 4% because we're already started.
For better or worse, with IHCDA, they are extremely objective about their scoring. So if you get the points and you score more than the person that applied for a project wherever else in Indiana, they'll award you. They won't say, Oh, well, we funded this project there, so, and it was only 2 years ago, so even though they score really well, we're not gonna give it to them. They don't do that. Other states give themselves more leeway, but they're very objective. So if we did the 9% and it scored, and then if we went back 1, 2, 3 years later and it scored, they would give us the credits.
The only time that really, if I can jump in, the only time that really becomes an issue is in larger markets like Evansville, for example. IHCDA does look at making sure that, again, projects aren't concentrated, so we're not concentrating a lot of low-income people in a small area. But in a market like Lawrenceburg, that really isn't, that wouldn't be a concern for them.
Yeah, 2 9% deals on that site wouldn't trigger that clause.
And you own the land, so it could be we go in and you don't get it. We've had that happen. Actually, somebody in the room turned us down before on a deal. So Danny shot down a deal we had in Terre Haute, and we went back and we got it a second time. So here, since you control the site, so we could conceivably go in, not score, but then next round, we're back
With a
in,
new QAP.
knocking on the door again.
New QAP, we could be more competitive, or you can make you know what, let's not go through that process again. Let's just do a 4%, and we can just, I understand it's more money coming from Lawrence.
So what do you guys offer in the complexes as far as for the seniors? Have you got the weight rooms and all that stuff for them, or?
So there's
Nurses for them?
There's all kinds of amenity space, so there's typically, the ones that are most used are the computer labs and community gathering rooms. They love to do like birthday parties for each other and have meals catered in. So they like community rooms with kitchens, and then we usually will have some kind of exercise fitness room. Those are the most used spaces, but there's all kinds of different options we could do.
And we can shoot you pictures of our different properties with the amenities we have for our seniors and different developments.
Well, we was thinking too, because there's people that need rehab, you know, when you get old, you might break something. I'm getting up there, so if I break something, I might need somewhere to go rehab it.
Yeah.
Instead of having to go to a hospital or something.
So yeah, it's very common for us. I would say most of ours probably have some room with exercise equipment. If they needed like true physical therapy, we'd probably connect them with a service provider that can do more tailored therapy. But yes.
We don't have a lot of squat racks and things like that, but we have the aerobics and some of the
not in the
lightweights
senior ones.
Yes.
Ms. Brookbank, did you have a question?
I do have one question. So we have on here 60 units. Are you saying if we lower the amount of units, which would, obviously lower our contribution, we would score significantly lower? To where maybe it wouldn't be worth it for you to do the application?
Say you decreased to 50 units.
Yeah.
That would decrease your total development cost.
Yeah.
We would still need to score, we would still need 10% of total development cost. It would just be a lesser amount.
Right.
So you're just doing less units. Here, the other thing is that once you get upwards of like 55, 60 units, you have more of a budget to support more staff, and you can have better management. When you start getting below 50, below 45, it's just the mechanics of how you just don't have enough. There's fixed expenses when you have a property, and so the more units you have, the better management you can provide, because there's more money to pay for it.
But the scoring wise, so the scoring wise though, I don't really feel like I got a good answer to that.
If say you knocked off $3 million of the project cost by going down to you would knock off the 10% of that difference in cost. So you would be contributing less money because the total development cost went down, because we only need to generate 10% of the development cost. Does that make sense?
I get that. It was the points wise. Would that hurt us significantly points wise in your application?
It would not, because if you get 10% of your development cost from the local community, you get 4 points. It doesn't matter what the overall cost of the project is or the amount of the subsidy that comes in, as long as it's 10%.
And most of that subsidy is probably coming through taxes, so if
It's-
you do fewer units, you have less taxes to house. But
Right.
it-
Okay.
But we wouldn't score any less, right?
Right.
Or
Okay.
you would get
I just
her-
wanted to see if there
yeah.
was wiggle room with the amount of
Yeah.
units and then the, total contribution cost and everything, so.
If we
just wanted to
did,
see.
going the other way though, if we did 70, then we're getting over their cap and then
Yeah,
you're
once,
limited.
yeah,
and-
their 9% deals typically are max out around 60. We could theoretically push it up to 70, but trying to balance number of units and subsidy, but that's all stuff that we could go push and pull and work with you on.
Does the land count towards the development cost or the contribution?
Yes. So
Okay.
my hope would be that if the land was donated and we got a good appraisal on it, and we could get, and if we got some kind of tax abatement structure that worked for you all, if that's something you consider, my hope would be that between those two, we could get to at least half of the 1.2 million. And then try to come up with the rest through either, I don't know, if there's maybe some site work that could be done to help level it out, bring utilities to the site, that counts.
Impact fees to
Feel
those.
better?
I do feel better now, thank you.
So do you need the
I felt her
entire
probing
parcel?
question. I helped her out there.
Can we get this project done retaining a piece of that ground?
You could section off a piece of the land if that was the direction you wanted to go.
Okay.
And we'd love to have it all, but the reality is if we're only building 60 units on half the site, you're better off keeping control of the other. We'd still want to work with you and be the ones going after it, but
Right.
might as well keep it in your coffers.
If the commission feels like phase 2 is in our best interest, looking forward, it probably helps if we own the land, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to
Good
if,
point.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
If you did want to do a phased 2 separate phases, it would make sense to separate the land.
Because otherwise it wouldn't count in the
Because in the
contribution.
future
so it
application, you
would
wouldn't
then.
be able to.
okay,
Assuming they don't change the rules on us.
Yeah.
right.
Hey,
That's a good thought. That's a good thought.
getting up there thinking, man.
Right, on top of things, all right.
Well, if we're
Anything
good,
else?
we've got our work session scheduled for June 14th,
16.
June 16th at 4:30 PM. We'll YouTube live that as well for the work session. Does anybody have any additional questions before we end this?
I have a request though for Brian, not for these guys, they could leave, but could we do like a cost breakdown, like a rent breakdown between both projects based on income with Flattery Collins and ERS and get, let's see where the rent rates are gonna be for each group?
You mean for our work session, not for this?
Yeah.
Well, do it in a work section, but, get the
But have it
information for
available.
us to review for the next.
The
Just to
work session.
jump in on that, I know that wasn't a question for me, but theoretically,
Well, it will
their
be.
rents should be, their rents should be the same, because it's
Yeah.
You're saying
dictated
they're not
by
based
HUD.
by you,
Yeah.
they're based.
The rent,
they're-
unless they are artificially decreasing the rents more.
Because
If we
it's a
had it in
government
writing, we
guideline,
could tell.
correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it's a
Because-
government guideline, it doesn't
Just
make
kind
any
of talking to
difference.
them prior to, it seems like you guys are a little bit more expensive on your rent. Then, like I said, we're just talking in numbers real quick.
We
but,
can
mean,
give you any information that you
I
want.
would just like to see it in writing.
Right, I mean, I understand.
For
You hear those
comparison.
numbers and I don't blame you for, it's a good
So I think
question.
that should
So
play
if I
a huge,
requested
Yeah.
the rent table,
have an
would you
impact on
reference
who we go with.
Well, yeah.
But, and that's the,
Right.
exactly, so that's why we wanted to have,
Are posted publicly.
This program probably dictates that.
yeah, that's why we wanted to have a presentation session and then a work session. The work session, we can talk about these guys when they're not in the room.
Bad things about us.
But all the factors that seem like they're important to us, like the rents, like the number of the units, like how we carve out the property, send those all to Mr. Messmore and Ms. Brookbank so that we have all that ready for the work session. That way we all get in the room and talk about what are the factors that mean a lot to us.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
You
Like
may
I
get
said,
an
that was a-
email or
that
you
was
may get
directed
reached
for
out to
Brian,
for
so
additional
if you get
information
that
we might
information.
Yeah, I
want. So
think
be
that's
on the
the number
lookout
one,
for
huge.
category.
contacting with Brian.
I thought everything was
That,
about
and
the
I
same,
think
but it's not.
if we have an estimate, just what kind of an idea that property's gonna bring in, do we have any idea, Brian? The valuation of the property over there? Okay.
And you'll have all this prepared for us for the work session?
No question about it.
Awesome.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I know who's gonna have it.
When he says we,
Yeah, it's a we.
royal we.
All right, well, again, thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming.
Thank you
everybody
so
in
much.
Glen for
Thanks,
hanging on.
everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank everybody in
Thank you,
Glen
guys.
as well.
It'd be a great project for us,
Yep.
and you.
All right, be safe.
Thank you.
I know that took a while, but there was a lot of good questions, a lot of good discussion. Definitely
thanks for your
appreciate
patience.
that. Moving on, I'll throw it over to Mr. Messmore for 124 Short Street. We have a land contract.
We do.
That has been in our packets. I believe it was in everybody's packets, correct?
Well, we have all new, we handed those out this evening, so everything's a little updated.
Oh, what's that different?
Yeah, I'll just try to bring us into somewhere close to the landing. Our last meeting, we had a great discussion, had a couple things that we needed to work through. We've been able to do that. In my opinion, none of which were, changing the original structure or the agreement or the binding issues or the clawbacks or anything like that. They were just, pitch and catch kind of things to make the resos feel more comfortable about some of the wording in the land sale contract. And then we pitched back what we thought would be good for the first right of refusal. So I think there were a couple minor changes included in that I would probably defer to Dell. But certainly my intention this evening was to get all these things approved and signed off.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Messmore. It pleases the commission and council. The agreement, the land sale agreement that we read through in detail last meeting and approved really didn't change other than the change that we discussed, where we proposed, we wanted a right of first refusal, just kind of blanket, and we went back and proposed, instead of just a blanket, one that had some qualifying language, so that if they get a bona fide offer, we would get a right of first refusal. But if it's the same or substantially the same business, if it's a restaurant, right, then we would waive our right of first refusal. So if the reason that was important is because our right of first refusal is based on average of 2 appraisals, which is our statutory obligation. So if average of 2 appraisals is X, but they get an offer for X plus $100,000, they could actually take that higher number as long as it's going to continue to be a restaurant. So we felt like that gives everyone the comfort and the protection we need. This deal has always kind of been in that vein, right? 5 years of this amazing restaurant, which my staff went and ate lunch there, by the way, today, and loved it, and everyone's so excited. And then 5 years after that of this right of first refusal, now we've got 10 years. We're guaranteed to have a restaurant there. That's pretty amazing. That's a great deal for the citizens. It really protects the Redevelopment Commission in the city of Lawrenceburg. Great deal for the Rezo Group and the Darren Harris Group. So that was really the one and only change. We did add a couple things that were just kind of left out. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but really that was the only change. And so we would sign that updated agreement today. And then I'm passing out the addendum. I know we approved the addendum last time, but when we did that, it had a couple exhibits. Really, I wanted to just change that so it only has 2 exhibits. So the new version would just say, and the addendum, remember, is changing the contract to say, okay, now because of the coronavirus slowdown and the different challenges we've seen on the site, plus our desire to not have construction during park season, we're just going to divide it up into 2 parts now. Part A will be done end of June. Part B will be done end of September. So Part A is everything but the rooftop deck. Part B is just adding the rooftop deck. So now, where the original contract said, Part B is everything, now we decided jointly in cooperation with the developers that we would do everything but the rooftop deck, wait, and then start that in the off season and have that done. So that's what the addendum is. So the change was just to add the 2 exhibits to make it a little more clear. And I would ask for questions, obviously, and answers, and then to approve both these documents tonight.
Mr. Rezzo, do you have any issues with these documents?
I do not. I mean, we've reviewed them. We're both prepared to sign tonight and get this behind us. Absolutely. And I mean, this is a fantastic day that, you know, they're open today. It's been a long time coming. Kind of emotional a little bit right here. I didn't think I would be. But I've spent a lot of time, as you know, doing that, as well as the commission before you, this commission, our Dell, my attorney, Kelly, and of course Brian. And it's just great to see it's actually come to fruition. And now we have something that is not only great for all of us, but I mean for the entire community. So we're excited.
Thank you.
We're excited.
A couple
So-
people from the clerk treasurer's office ate over there today too, and I didn't eat it, but it looked excellent. And I did want to thank you guys as well for putting plant-based options on your menu.
Yes.
There's a significant vegetarian, vegan contingent in Lawrenceburg and the surrounding area, and I think that plays very well. So on my end, I just want to say thank you for that, and it is appreciated.
And I'll tell you, I'm the furthest thing from vegan there is, and I've eaten most of the things on that menu, and I would go there and order it. It has really good items in that section, and so that's one thing that, you know, when we all came together and started talking about this, is we don't really know. We know the development business, but not the restaurant business. So, you know, this is a good partnership. We knew Darren, and we knew the product that he had and what he could bring here, and now it's here. So we're super excited.
Yeah.
So again,
A motion?
thank all of you.
Yeah,
I
congratulations.
appreciate it.
It's exciting.
Thank you, Mike.
Have a motion
I'll
by
make a
Mr.
motion to
Shaker.
approve this agreement.
I second it.
Which agreement are we approving?
Okay, are we doing both at the same time, or are we
We're
doing
gonna do
them
both at the
separate?
same time?
That's
I'll
okay.
move to
Good.
approve both
Great.
at the same time.
Thank you.
We have a motion by Kevin, a second by Lenny. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We're gonna pass this through so that the residents.
I just got a
get
question.
weatherized and get them.
No questions
Kinda
on it. Too late.
serious.
We voted already.
Did you say that they've had food over there today, and you didn't get none? What was you just, or did I
Lenny?
not hear this right?
Don't we have a rule where the meeting's over an hour, then we get free food? I thought that
I'm
was.
thinking to myself, now, if you had food over there and I didn't
didn't
get
have any,
told,
though.
there's
I didn't
something
have
wrong
any.
with this picture now.
I didn't get any, but I'm gonna get those
Kelly, did
plant-based
these-
options, that's for sure.
Kelly?
I got alligator on the brain.
Oh, yeah, you gotta get that alligator.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Rezzo, thank you very much. Appreciate what you're
Thank
doing
you.
over
I'm
there.
sure
It looks
we'll-
excellent.
Be seeing you guys over there. I know I'll be spending a lot of time there.
You call me every once in a while.
Yeah, see.
We're gonna miss him now.
Yeah, Brian's put up with a lot of my phone calls and texts throughout this whole project, so, there were times that you know, from the very beginning, you know, you kind of wonder, is it ever gonna happen? And then we have a pandemic, and I have Darren who's panicking over that, you know, just, if it could happen on this project, it did. So this is a very big day. But you got through it. We got through it. Thank you.
Yes, congratulations.
And for the board, I would say I apologize. When I said it was in your packets, I was referring to the next item on our agenda, which is the 556 West High Street. Currently have a proposal for purchase of that lot. I'll turn it over to Mr. Messmore for further discussion.
Yes, we have got our appraisals complete and calculated. If you'll remember, this is a property on West High. We have 3 additional vacant lots down there. These were all properties that the owner or whoever was in control of the property contacted the city and asked if we would consider purchasing. And of course, under the guidelines of the average of 2 appraisals, we did add in, I believe a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, the option or the additional 1 year's rent to the average of 2 appraisals. So in this case, at 556 West High, the purchase price would be $66,250. And again, I'm recommending that we go ahead and purchase, and that would include the demolition and restoration of the property to make the lot available for the future.
We have 3 lots now. This would be the 4th lot.
This would be the 4th lot on West High.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Messmore, could you tell us about the outdoor pavilion proposal?
Yes, I have, well, you also have reviewed the 2 proposals I have. This, the outdoor pavilion and restrooms for the Civic Park. This concept drawing and cost estimate would provide us what the potential cost would be for outdoor restroom facilities over on the Scudder Thomas lot. In addition to that, we've considered perhaps an outdoor seating pavilion. So in order to determine whether or not that's a worthy project, I'm asking to proceed with some direction on which proposal you're most comfortable with, but to get that work done.
I'd like to make a motion on that. We had discussed previously that the proposal from, or the authorization from MKSK is actually the company that did the Civic Park for us, correct?
That's
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, correct.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I nodded.
I saw a lot of nodding.
Nodding doesn't work.
Anyways, so my thought is, with the fact that this is adjacent, why wouldn't we go along with the same company that did the Civic Park, because they're probably going to follow suit with pretty much the same theme overall.
Do we have a second to Ms. Pritchard's motion?
I'll second.
Have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, the restrooms have been a consideration for a long time. The outdoor seating pavilion is kind of a an idea that, you know, may or may not take hold. We'll have some time to spend to evaluate that and discuss it, but it could be you know, a nice opportunity for people to enjoy downtown Lawrenceburg in other ways. So
I think that's an important point to make. This is all a preliminary process just to get the ball rolling on things.
That's
Not necessarily
correct.
what we're going to do, but what we have the potential to do.
And what Ms. Fritch is saying is MKSK is one of the groups that has worked on the design for the Civic Park. They did an excellent job, so that's why she's chosen to kind of move, and the entire board has chosen to move forward, and then they would bring some designs forward, and this is just step one in hopefully designing something that'll fit over there.
All right, Mr. Messmore, we have 342 Short Street as well this evening.
yes, I was contacted by the owner of 342 Short Street. He is interested in selling this property at the average of 2 appraisals. It has not been appraised. I'm asking the board tonight to move forward. The intention would be to get the appraisals. It is currently rented, and so we would, you know, get the appraisal and determine what the previous year's rent was, and then we would offer the opportunity to purchase it at that price. The owner does understand, as I do always, you know, this is a bottom line deal. The average 2 appraisals, and if it's an active rental, 1 year's rent, he's agreed to that. And for the purposes of demolition, restoration of the lot, and making it available to the public for new homes.
And just to be
A
clear,
new home. Yeah.
just to be clear, if we vote on this evening, this moves it all the way forward. You
I
won't bring
would
anything
come
to
back
us?
before the purchase.
Okay.
This is just for the appraisal.
Yeah, this is for the appraisal, and, you know, under the premise that that's where we're going.
Brian, the picture that we have doesn't appear that it's a home that needs torn down. Can you speak to that?
Well, I have some information that it's not, not in the best of repairs. So,
Okay.
You should tour it.
huh?
Set up a
Yeah.
tour.
We could.
Yeah.
We could go check it out.
Seriously, yeah. Be prepared.
Yeah.
Okay. So as long,
Okay.
Would anybody like to make a motion to move forward with this process for 342 Short Street?
Just to get the appraisals as they
Just for the
ask.
To
appraisal.
get the appraisal,
Just for the appraisals.
I'll make motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Everybody acts like they're tired.
Lenny, you look tired.
I'll tell you that tax credit stuff's deep.
It was, but a good conversation, learning experience, I think, for all of us this evening.
Grease separator.
We'll go to the Sugar Shack grease separator now.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, actually, the mayor asked me to bring this to this particular board. The Sugar Shack is a property that the city owns, and he is asking that the redevelopment commission sponsor and/or pay for the installation of a grease trap or grease separator to the east of the building. And I have two proposals here this evening. One is for $12,950, who can complete the work on time, and the other one was $18,465, who cannot complete the work on time. So based on getting the work done on time, and on time I mean by June 30th, we want to get the sidewalk replaced and repaired prior to the events beginning in July.
Brian, you're comfortable with both contractors?
Yes.
Question,
Yes.
why are we installing a grease trap in the Sugar Shack anyway if it's just
They are expanding their products and services.
okay,
They'll be serving hamburgers, and it's a building we own, so
correct?
yeah.
I
They're
like the
expanding.
idea because we're expanding the use and ability for that building. We own the building. We're improving our own property.
But we're improving it for a specific business. What if something were to happen and we go to bring in another business that doesn't need a grease trap, and we've invested $15,000 in a grease trap?
You?
Good point.
Yes, Mr. Noppert, come on up.
I think that's a good point, Mrs. Fritsch. I think, and just thinking through redevelopment, we've heard some incredible opportunities, with the senior housing development, with even buying houses. I know some of the longer-term strategy on West High Street with, development. I think there's some great opportunities, some low-hanging fruit, which we've been taking advantage of. Also on Short Street, been several new constructions to go through there that have really helped that street. But in regards to businesses, I would just like to encourage you guys to kind of look more toward, we're incentivizing tax credits for TIF districts, development purposes for buildings, but when it comes to fixing, things in restaurants or even freezers or, won't mention smokers and things like that, I think maybe it would be better to go more toward, if there's a way to fund Main Street and allow them to kind of use their committees to kind of distribute help for businesses, specifically business-specific industry, as opposed to redevelopment being kind of more vested in, the servicing side of things. As we've kind of seen some of the, still have some wounds from the past on those things that we're still dealing with. But I think, and I'm not saying that we can't figure out a way to help them. I mean, I think it's good, and we do own the building. It's putting investment into that. But maybe there should be something that we kind of establish that's more through Main Street, through redevelopment, to be able to help for those type of, specific things such as this.
And I agree. You just made me think of something that, some of the old buildings, for example, will need grease traps, for restaurants. I mean, and that could be, a whole different grant program that we can consider for things like that. The problem with this one is they got their new business action grant. They can't apply for another one through Main Street the way it exists today. So we do need to maybe consider some other options of getting those types of grant funding to Main Street. And I agree with, I mean, there's probably some things we should think about.
I can appreciate both of your points. I think, April, to your point, I think that it creates a more marketable building if they aren't there in a year. And I think we want a restaurant on that corner. I also like that they're going to be selling $5 burgers. I love the new restaurant, the Firehouse, but a burger is $12 to $16. So I like the offering that this will bring to the park for a family to come down and get a $5 burger rather than the other option on the park.
Are we doing this solely because we own the building, though? I mean, what happens to the restaurant that's a block over that we don't own that building, and they come to us and say, we need a new hood for X inside of our restaurant?
They don't call it, they would have to go to Main Street.
Why would they have to? But
Because we do not have a program. This is a building that we own.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we're setting up a guideline that we're only going to do this for the buildings that we own.
Not even for the buildings we own. I think it's just a particular case.
Like a one-off,
It's
right?
on the
Have an
park. It's on our crown jewel of our blossoming downtown. It expands. My opinion, it expands the goodness of the park by allowing them to serve something that they can't currently serve.
I mean, I'm not, disregarding what you're saying. I'm just, it's not a, there are no other programs that this board manages because Main Street manages its small business grants. We are targeted specifically on larger projects that we are attracting to our community at this time. So if somebody wanted a hood, they'll never make the podium.
It was a hypothetical.
I know. But I'm serious. We're not buying smoker. We're, and so to Justin's point, I do think there probably is a gap out there for opportunities for some of our, businesses that don't fit necessarily within the grant program that we have.
Well, and I think it's important to speak to April's point, speak to Justin's point, and speak to Kevin's point that we're not creating a new program or setting a precedent. This is different because it is our building that we own. We're installing the grease trap really as a product. The timeline is, they wanted to start doing hamburgers a year ago, and then after that was when LMU created new rules for grease traps because of issues we're having with our plumbing, basically, of the city. So then after that, it became, prohibitive for them to put in the grease trap. So that's why we wouldn't want to create a precedent for anyone who needs a grease trap could come to get it from us. So that's speaking to Justin and April's point, but then you could also speak to Kevin's point that this is a building that we own and we have this very unique opportunity. We would do it on a non-precedent setting basis.
What about this? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you,
It's fine.
Richard.
Do we have the right to, if we're increasing the value of the property and we're giving him an added value piece so that he can create more income for himself, do we have the ability to raise the rent on this property? Because he's only paying $750 a month right now.
If we're going to invest and he's going to increase his revenue?
I think that's a fair conversation. I
That's
don't
the
know.
only way I
He
think
probably
I
has
would
a
be able to
lease in
support
place that is set through some period
Yeah,
of
he
time.
has a lease, so you wouldn't be able to do it till after that lease period. But I could find out, is it a one-year lease or does it have multiple years left on it? We couldn't adjust it now.
Well, you can always adjust the rent as long as it's an agreement between both parties, correct?
Yeah, if they agree,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so even if he's under a lease and we say, we'll do this, but we want to increase your rent by $200 a month. Or
So that should be in this motion, right?
Yes.
Well, and the issue with, us putting in a grease trap versus a private entity putting a grease trap in, chances are we'll put in a grease trap that is, conforms to our city specifications. That would be much higher than the minimum amount that would be put in. So, keep that in mind. If we're working on our own building.
I don't think they're saying to put, that for them, give them money to have someone else do it. I think they're just saying is if we give them money, is there any recovery on that money?
Exactly, because they
repaid.
are,
Yeah, we're putting
they're
it in the property.
benefiting from this grease trap.
We want something back from it.
I didn't realize the rent was $750.
Yeah, they're, so
Yeah,
they're
his
gonna
rent-
benefit.
That is a
They're
very
gonna be
low
able to
rent
sell
for
more
that corner
product.
lot.
Yeah, so,
One question I have, does that mean we're tearing up that street again and put this grease trap in that we just?
Just a
did?
sidewalk.
Just a sidewalk, thank you.
That's, Mr. Lett, that's why it's important we do it, so we don't screw
I
anything up.
understand. I know all about fault, trust me.
Yeah.
Factual greases.
In
We don't
terms
wanna-
of precedent,
We wanna do the work ourselves, cause we just built
No,
a
I'm
brand
serious,
new
man. I
park.
understand the whole process here.
in terms of precedent, though, I think what we do as a commission is to better Lawrenceburg, improve the quality of life, to make this gathering space better. And if somebody else has a building that wants to convert to a restaurant, I think we're there to help them, especially if it aligns with our vision for what we've already created
That's the
and
key.
what we're building on.
but I don't think the alternate, as Richard was saying, as far as increasing the rent slightly, that's not that high for that location.
Right.
And that way, we're not constantly always giving, we are recouping, even if it's a small amount over a period of time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which, at some point in time, you know, our monies are going down as well, so this is just a way to,
Y'all be careful.
Thanks for coming, guys, good to see you again.
We wear you out?
Yeah.
that would be what I would entertain, would be a increase in rent to be able to do this.
Also, so to get to that number, would we wanna know, okay, what's the cost? And then we could break that down to a number and then bring it back to you, so increase the rent by a certain amount, repay half, you know, what would you wanna see them? Cause I don't know how much it costs, actually, Massmore might.
Asmar, what was the
Said
number
one that
actually?
could make it happen in the time frame that needed to be happen, or,
One was 12 and one was 18, one?
Yeah. It doesn't have a breakdown of what the tank itself costs. It's $13,000, roughly $13,000.
and that includes labor, everything?
Yeah.
And
So if we
tank?
Yeah.
moved rent to $850 a month, that would almost pay us back over a 10-year period. But we don't plan on owning that building for 10 years.
Right.
That's another discussion that we'll have to have at some point as to where the ownership of these buildings fall, and then what our time frame is to do what we want to with the buildings. I think that's a discussion that does need to be had publicly, but for right now, we're dealing with
But right
this.
now, we're dealing with the.
But wouldn't that also value the property, make it more valuable to have a grease trap in it?
Yeah.
It should, yeah, because if a restaurant owner
I
wants
mean-
it, that's a big deal.
We recoup our money one way or another?
Yeah.
We're investing in our own property, yeah.
Depends on
I
how many
mean, I-
burgers we eat.
Okay,
I don't
so.
think anybody's argument is wrong or invalid, but I think what's in front of us here is an opportunity to expand this business so that they can offer more things around the park.
It's going to
And-
make the park more
And it's gotta be,
enjoyable.
Yeah.
we either gotta do it now or it won't get done this year.
I'm not against it, but I wouldn't be in favor of it unless it has something tied to an increased rent for the current property rent.
I agree.
Put a pro forma out on that, I mean, on the increased rent, you know, just over.
I agree, I'm comfortable with Kevin's suggestion. What, did you say $100?
Said $100
So we go
bucks.
from $750 to $850 a month, effective as soon as the grease trap is installed?
Or immediately.
Or, well, they can't,
Once we agree to
they can't sell
install
any
the grease
burgers
trap.
till it's installed, so we thought we'd give them.
Yeah,
But it's gonna
that
be
makes sense
done
once it's
within
installed
a
and
few
then
weeks.
raise
It's
it.
It's gotta
installed
be
and
done
they're
here
able
pretty
to.
quick, doesn't it, Brian?
What?
It's gotta be done pretty quick.
When can he do it?
Well, that's what he's saying, they can get
Yeah.
it done.
What was the timeline, I think was asked,
When would you
Brian?
start, Brian?
End of
on
what?
the project?
Immediately after we give it an up or down. And of course, this will be, you know, this will have to be reviewed with the
Property owner.
property Leaser.
Or leaser, I'm sorry, right, because we are, but I
So-
would think that they would be able to answer fairly quickly, yeah, we'll do this or we won't.
Does somebody want to put this in the form of a motion? We have a motion on the floor to add a grease trap to Sugar Shack contingent upon an increase of $100 per month in rent.
And the rent would start, the
And rent would
increase
start-
when the grease trap is installed.
When installation is complete.
After the completion date.
That's fine.
Installation is
Kelly,
complete.
did you get that?
Yes, I have it.
Do you want to motion that?
I'll make the
We
motion.
have a motion. Do we have a second on the floor?
I'll second.
Kevin seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries.
One question, so then you then have to wait, Dell, will you then have to wait until, won't they have to agree to that first, or
Yes.
how will that? So we would have to hold
I'll
off
talk to them, and
on,
then if they agree, I'll draw up a new lease.
and if they don't, then we need to readdress, or?
No, we'll kick them out. They have to move it.
Okay,
No, they can stay there and sell ice cream. We're just saying we're not gonna put the grease trap in.
right, okay.
Oh, never
Just
mind.
seeing
Nah,
where we go from here,
I was
so.
kidding.
But if
We're just
everything's
saying we're not-
fine,
We won't build it if
you
they
get
don't
the
agree for
okay,
$100,
being
okay?
go ahead and start it ASAP, right?
Yeah.
After
He's
they
got it
agree
on
to
our
the
end. We're
increase.
good.
And,
Ms. Brookbank, I apologize. Earlier in the evening, we had cut you off. We didn't allow you to do your financial report, but here we are, and it's
quite
your
all
time to
right.
shine.
Okay.
She
As-
loves money.
I would. This is a lot of money. As of June 1st, 2020, the balance for redevelopment is $2,592,474.88. And after monies committed to projects, it's $1,550,081.78.
Does anybody have any questions in regard to this? Thank you, Ms. Brookbank. We sure appreciate it. If we've had time to review the claims, can I get a motion to approve the claims this evening?
I'll make motion.
Lenny motions it. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by April. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Comments from the audience? Everybody has left us, except for
Everybody's left.
There is no audience.
Me too.
I will now take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Lenny motion
to
second.
adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kevin. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Tommy, Justin, Brett,
I
thanks
would-
for coming.
I would
Taxpayers. it's gonna
like
be
to
a
tell
great
you
project.
guys, thanks for having us. I really like to listen.
Well, we didn't have a choice in the matter.
You better start making
It is what it
choices.
is.
You can be replaced.
They're trying